Hello, everybody. Today, we're going to talk about how to leverage outsourcing to help scale and grow your business. Today, this is going to be a special episode because we have a guest, and he's not just a guest, but this guy is a very special person in my life. He's not just a mentor, but I consider him as a friend and a family. So he's been helping with me in terms of personal branding. I've learned a lot about personal branding, about online presence, about doing a business, about dealing with a team member, and yeah, he's like a family. You will be wanting to finish this episode and maybe beg for more. So our guest is Henry Kaminsky. He is the founder of Unique Designs, a full-service design, branding, and digital marketing agency that is dedicated to helping personality brands, coaches, consultants, influencers, speakers, authors to design and grow their brands, scale their profits, increase their exposure online. He is also an author of the Amazon bestseller Refuse to Give Up. He's also the host of the popular Brand Doctors podcast, where he talks about strategies that help entrepreneurs design reputable and profitable personal brands. As a self-taught graphic designer and brand consultant, he has overcame all the odds to build a wildly successful multi-million-dollar business over the past 12 years. Mind you, multi-million-dollar business. He has worked with a diverse range of business owners and professionals. This is exciting, including celebrities like John Bon Jovi, Fabio Viviani, as well as the internet expert Russell Brunson, who has named Henry the $1 Million Brander and recently has been inducted into the ClickFunnels 2 Comma Club by generating over $1 million with one single sales funnel using the ClickFunnels software. So without further ado, let us welcome on the show no other than the brand doctor himself, Henry Kaminsky, my man. How are you, Henry?
What an introduction. I love it.
It's such a long intro, but yeah. So how are you today, Henry?
I'm doing awesome. It sounds like we have a little four-legged friend in the background.
Yes, he's kind of excited. I've been asking my daughter to keep him quiet, but this is
you
life.
gotta love it.
Yes.
Listen, when I do my podcast, I sometimes have Dante running around in the background too, and he loves to get on it. And you know what? It is what it is. It keeps it more entertaining.
Right.
No, completely. Business is all about real life, and sometimes dogs bark and kids run in.
It is what it is. It is what it is.
So Henry, tell us how you started. What do you do, and why are you doing what you're doing now?
Well, do you have 3 days to spend?
Yeah, sure.
I'm teasing. I'll keep this super short. It was about 2013. My business was sort of on a decline, and I was really successful the first 8 years of my business. I was in the nightlife industry, doing all the marketing work for a lot of the nightclubs in New York and New Jersey area. And I was in the scene. I was young. I was not married, and I was in it. And I got a lot of business. I was very quick. I was very good. And I was very personable, and business just boomed. Then competition came. There was other people that started coming up into the ranks and started getting into the scene as well. I started getting undercut by $20 here, $30 there. And business started to get really competitive. And then I started to get older, started to get out of the scene, and my business started to sort of disintegrate a little bit. Then on top of that, Hurricane Sandy comes through, wipes out two of my big corporate clients. And now I'm left with trying to figure out how to come back how to make up for $250,000 worth of business. And that was very hard. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that so quickly. So I started to panic because, as again, the bank account was dwindling. And I started to really try to figure out what I wanted to do at that point. I didn't know if my design career was over. I didn't know if I would have to go back to corporate and get another job, because I worked 8 years in corporate at a hospital locally. And I wasn't sure what to do. So I had to have that heart-to-heart with my wife. It was very, very scary, but at the same time, I felt like if I don't tell her and keep this a secret still, it's going to kill me, like literally.
Yeah.
So I had that conversation with my wife, and instead of my wife, blowing me off or getting upset or divorcing me, she said, let's get to work. Let's help you. So she started to give me a lot of insight on, because she comes from a big marketing background too, which is cool. It's just one big happy marketing family here.
Yeah.
And what happened was I started to do a lot of research, and I still believe to this day that old saying, if you seek, you shall find.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for her to sort of point me in the right direction, I would have never found Russell Brunson. So I literally bumped into Russell Brunson through a Facebook group. Somebody kept talking about ClickFunnels. So I started to do some research and digging, and finally found his podcast, and I started listening to his podcast, and eventually reached out to him, and I wanted to know what his inner circle program was all about. I kept hearing him talk about it on the podcast. Come to find out, it was a $25,000 coaching program, which I wasn't even near being able to afford. But I reached out anyway, and I went through the process, and eventually there was actually a $10,000 coaching program that he was using at the time and selling at the time. And I jumped into that, not being able to afford it, not having that kind of money to spend. But I said, listen, if I don't do this, it's not if this works, it's when this works. And that was my mindset going in. I will be okay. So I paid $5,000, and I paid the other $5,000 off in the next 5 months, and I got to work. And I met with Russell. We were both hysterical crying on the first call together. And next thing you know, he pays me $6,000 on the spot that day to help him with the .com Secrets book launch. Now, I didn't design that cover for the book. My buddy Rob Cicadas did, but I helped him with a lot of the marketing materials behind that book. And that started the relationship. So within a day, I made 60% of my investment back. And then 16 months later, I was able to generate over $500,000 worth of revenue based on his mentorship and me really busting my ass and putting in the work, which leads me to what we're talking about today. It's building your business by building your team and knowing how to replace yourself doing that. I was petrified of building my team. I knew I wanted one, and I knew it was time because I kept hitting that. I think I was maybe at $12,000 in revenue a month level, and I wanted to get to 20. I told him, if you could just get me to 20, I'll be happy. I'll be a millionaire at that point in my eyes. And needless to say, it went way. By putting in the work, I went way. I exceeded that way further than I ever could imagine. But I wouldn't have been able to do it without building a team first.
Right.
And at what point, Henry, when did you decide that you needed the help? You kind of said you'd hit this plateau, but what was it that sort of pushed you over the edge that you needed some outside help?
So the great question. So no time with my family. Now, I didn't have a son at the time. I had a dog and I had a wife, but I was working 20 hours a day. I didn't even have the money that I was making at that point. Once I started generating revenue again, I didn't even have time to spend it. So, and that really put a strain on my relationship with my wife because I was just nose deep into work all day long. And I would finish up 10, 11 o'clock at night, and she'd be sleeping.
No time for vacation too.
Yeah, I mean, it was awful. And I was bitter. Because I was getting so overworked, I started to become a really nasty soul. And it wasn't my client's fault at all. They just signed up to get a job done. You know what I mean? They just wanted their brochure design. They just wanted their menus delivered on time. They didn't want my attitude. And they were getting my attitude because I was so stressed because it was just me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just me.
it was
It was the most
anyone.
inefficient. Yeah, it was the most
Yeah.
inefficient process I think I could ever imagine. Work. I can't even believe I worked like that for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so what happened was, I'll remember it to this day. Russell was like, "You need to become the CEO of this business if you want to take it to the next level," which means you have to replace yourself. You have to now create a project. You have to hire a project manager, and you have to build out this team. And I said, "But Russell, I don't know how to do that. Like I'll have 15. I'll hire him tomorrow, but I'll have
Yeah.
15 people staring me in the face, going, "What should I do?"
Mm-hmm.
So
So it's the being stressed and no time with your family. That's the time wherein you really felt that this is enough. I need help.
and
I
I
need
didn't have
to,
any
yeah.
control. The business ran me. I didn't run the business.
And you are not hitting your goals because you're so close to your business. You don't have any time to really think outside the box and think about the process and everything for your business. Yeah.
Pam, what goals? You know, my
Yeah.
goal. I didn't have any goals. Right. My goals were this guy needs this project done by 2 o'clock Friday. Is that going to happen or not? And
Just getting through the
So
day.
that
then,
was it.
yeah.
Just getting through the day. Yeah. And it was horrible. You know, I look back and I say, I don't know how I spent close to a decade operating like that, but it was very lucrative. Like I hustled my ass off. And then again, I wasn't financially intelligent. That's where I went wrong in my business. And I wasn't spending money on the right things. You know, instead of reinvesting in the business, I'd go out and buy stuff. And that really
You
came
have this
around.
thing with watches, I know.
Yes. And I got just up over my head, and I wasn't allocating my resources or finances correctly. And that's what got me into a big pickle. So now I'm very conscious of what I spend my money on, and
Yeah.
I'm now reinvesting back into my business tremendously by focusing on building a very strong infrastructure within. This
Yeah.
allows me to do the things that I love to do, and gives me the time back
And
that I
this is
need.
because you already hired a project manager, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know how granular you want to go, but I remember I hired I hired a project manager, and I wasn't quite sure how to coach her or tell her what I needed. So what I did was I just screen recorded the process of how I like onboard a client
Yeah.
and gave it to her. And I said, "This is how we onboard a client, and this is how I want you to do it." So she did that, and she did that for quite a bit, and then she got flaky. So let's keep it real here for a second. You know, one of the things that I value the most in my business is communication and
Right.
integrity. And when she started flaking out on me, like I would wake up in the morning going, "Well, I don't know if she's even going to do this today or not. I don't know if she's going to show up." So what did I do? I started micromanaging. I started doing it myself. And I feel like your audience may feel the same. They may feel like, you know, they're afraid to give up that control because, you know, they can do it. Nobody could do it better than them. And that's superhero syndrome. And that's going to get you in a lot of trouble. So, you know, there was a lot of fear going into hiring my first project manager. So what I did was I got some professional help. Again, I spent money in the right place this time. And I hired this guy that actually built systems out inside of businesses. And he actually owned a graphic design business himself. And he gave me a lot of that insight and process that he uses in his business, which worked really well. So what happened was the first project manager, I had to fire her because she just didn't show up. Right. Second, and then there was this woman who just like reached out out of nowhere one day. It was like a blessing. And her name was Pam. And she was like, you know, I think you're looking for, you know, I'm not sure if you're in the market for a project manager, but, you know, I would love to help you.
I can't remember actually because that's been what, 4 years ago?
It's about 4 years.
Yeah, and I remember we had this conversation one time. We have this catch-up meeting, and I asked you, like straightforward. I asked you, I just want to know, I'm just curious, why did you hire me as your project manager? And this is, guys, this is even before, I got hired by Unique Designs by Henry Kaminsky Jr. when I was starting my own business. So because I'm a single mom and I cannot be, without income, so I need to have something at that very moment. And so while we were David and I were building Great Work Online, we were already working. You and I were working already. So I was curious. Maybe you want to share that with our audience on how were you able to decide in hiring me, and what are
Yeah, well, I remember having that conversation with you, and I remember sharing with you the values and the passions behind Unique Designs and what my expectations were. And you were very assertive. You were very what's the word I'm looking for? I don't think it was assertive. You were very receptive to that. So I felt like our values aligned, and we were both out to accomplish the same types of things in our businesses and in our lives. And the one thing about you, Pam, is that you always came through. Like, it didn't matter if it was 11 o'clock in the morning or 11 o'clock at night. Like,
yeah, I
you
would
were
answer.
you're very responsive. And it wasn't even a matter of what day it was. Like, it could have been a Sunday night and you were
Yeah.
responsive. And I was like, this shows me integrity. This shows me work ethic. This shows me just a commitment that I have never, ever seen. Now, I heard through the grapevine that the Filipino culture comes from a very, very strong work ethic background. Like, these folks will work their butts off until the job is done. And I was skeptical at first because of the first project manager being so lackadaisical and fickle.
Yeah.
But what I found was when I brought you on board and you started helping me onboard more team members, I saw that work ethic. I saw the truth in that statement, and I said, wow, I would never be able to enroll people into my brand accelerator program. I would never have my monthly group mentorship program. I would never be able to make the impact that I'm making on my audience in social media without the team behind me. And it was funny, when we put together our organizational chart,
Yeah.
I was blown away that I had built this 15 person,
Right.
like very fluid, very well oiled machine. And I would never, ever be able to do it without the help of you and David. Honest to God. I mean, business is a team sport. And if you think you're going to do it all by your own, you're going to be in for a rude awakening. And I feel for those folks because they put every excuse up on the planet. I don't have the money. I don't have the time. Well, if you don't have the time now,
When?
yeah, when are you going to have the time?
Yeah.
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 Speaking of time, Henry, what's your best piece of advice for people on or how you were able to manage to free up so much time in your life to get better balance in your life?
Yeah. So what I could suggest is, I had a podcast guest come on the other day, and I asked her, how do you do it? How do you balance it? And she said, well, I write down a list of tasks, and then I ask myself, who cares? I was like, that's very simple. She said, so I'll write down a task like a blog post for tomorrow, and then I'll write next to it, who cares? Who cares about that? And I realized, so there's a few, so that's one way of really prioritizing and figuring out what you should be doing. The other thing is, and I teach this in my Brand Yourself course, there's a few things that you need to think about when hiring a project manager or building out the team. You have to reflect in and ask yourself, what are the things I should be doing? What are the things I can't do? What are the things I don't want to do?
Yeah.
And what things are going to be revenue generating activity?
Yeah.
Right. And when I figured out that my weak spot was managing projects, I immediately got help.
Yeah.
I did not wait a second, you know, because it's like this. I read this in a book once. They said, would you rather spend 3.5 weeks with a horrible cough, or would you rather spend 30 minutes going to the doctor and that doctor prescribing pneumonia to you and you getting the antibiotics that you need to get well in a few days?
Right.
Would you rather get thrown into the ocean to learn how to swim, or would you, if you could, take a few lessons before you dove in?
You know what, Henry? I think the reason why as well you were able to achieve your goal now is that because you admitted to yourself that you needed help during that time. I think most of the business owners who are struggling until now, that they are so overwhelmed with a lot of things and they are not being able to grow, is because they cannot let go of control. And I think that, you know, that's one of the characteristics of why I like you so much and why it is so like, you know, it's a walk in the park to work with you. There's no stress because number one, you listen. Let me step back a little bit. Number one is you know what you're good at. You know your strength, you know your weakness. You listen to what is that Steve Jobs that he says something like you hire smart people for a reason. Something like that, right?
Yeah.
So you hired smart people in your team now, and you listen. We have this every 2 weeks catch-up meeting, and you listen to each of the ideas and suggestions that each team members are giving. And it's not like, you know, I'm the boss, I'm the owner, you listen to me, you follow this is what I say. But because you listen to suggestions, it's not like you listen and then you do it. Of course, you listen and then you contemplate and if it is right. But I think that's the number one characteristics that you know, business owners should acquire or practice or should be able to develop, so that they will also have the success and the growth that they are aiming for their business.
Yeah, for sure. David, did you want to add anything?
Oh, I think you know, one of the things that Pam has told me time and time again is what she respects or likes about you as a leader is the fact that you do seek out the advice of your team, that you don't look at them just as employees or just, you know, the paid help, that you truly value what they bring. And I think that really is beneficial for any business. And what Pam said with the Steve Jobs thing, you know, you hire smart people and let them work, is you hire experts in their individual industries. You have an expert for this and an expert for this, an expert for that. A smart business owner would seek their counsel and not necessarily do everything that they say, but when they are expert in an area that you are not, why not listen to those people and let their experience and that help you grow? And I think that's one of the things that Pam repeatedly mentions about you, is that how willing you are to do that.
Yeah. Well, you know, when I got my master's degree in business management, you know, my Ron Calissi, God rest his soul, he was a beautiful, beautiful man, big guy. And he ran one of the local police academies for like 30 years over here in New Jersey. And he was just such a wise man. And he spearheaded this master's program, and I jumped in full blast because at the time the hospital was allowing me to get my master's degree, and they were paying 90% of it. So I say I'd be stupid to not get further my education. But one of the things he always said was, you have to allocate your resources. You have to allocate your resources, and you have to really truly care about the people that you bring on your team. Otherwise, they're not going to have the passion that you have about your business, because that's what I see a lot of people talk about. So let's pull the skeletons out of the closet for a second, right? So a lot of the things that I've seen building my business and working with other fellow entrepreneurs of my level and caliber, you know, they have this attitude, and I'm not speaking for every, I'm just speaking for a few that I've come in contact with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they'll make comments like, "Well, I'll just outsource it to a couple Filipinos and get it done." Like that attitude of these people are subhuman, or I can't think of the word right now. Like these people are inferior to them, like, because that's the attitude that I was feeling from them.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, that's gonna blow up in their face because they're not valuing these people as humans. They're just valuing them. They're not valuing them at all. They're looking at them as cheap labor.
Yeah.
And that is the worst way to look at building a virtual team. You know, so when I hire folks, I want to keep them long term. I want to invest in them. I want to build them. I want to grow them. And we've had, Pam, you've been around 4 years. I mean, we've had a couple of designers way back when that just matured into larger roles, and they went on and moved on to bigger and better things. Listen, I want to see those people do that. Like, I don't want to keep somebody locked in ball and chain to unique designs. If they have a better opportunity and they need to go, then they need to go and spread their wings. But at least I had some part in their life in developing them to be a better professional, right? So getting that stigma, getting that that thought process that your virtual team are like inferior people that live in these third world countries, I think you're fooling yourself, because there's a tremendous amount of talent out there. Even the bigger brands now are outsourcing overseas. I mean, Jason Pfeiffer, the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine, he'll be on my show today. He was talking about how, well, he was in a recent podcast that he launches, he was talking about how entrepreneurs the brand is outsourcing quite a bit of work overseas and stuff. So you know, it's the way the world's turning, it's the way the world's moving. And so I said to myself, well, if I'm gonna spend the time, money, and energy to build out this team, I'm gonna hire the best, and I'm going to treat them like family. And I really, really care about these folks. There was an old mentor of mine. He was a client of mine. He was in the business, advertising business, for like 30 years. He does all the radio commercials. He's the voiceover for all the radio commercials in New York. And I remember what he said to me one day. I went to go pick up some cash, and I sat down, and I always like to pick his brain. And he said, you know, I have people working for me for 15 years. And he said, I support their families.
True.
So, like, it's bigger than them just being part of the company. It's you're supporting you're putting food on their table. So there's a larger responsibility here for me. The way I see it is, you know, you're a single mom, you have 2 kids. You know, we have Melitza, we have Priyanka, we have Steven, who has he's a single dad. You know, like, we have all these people that are part of this team, and I feel like an obligation. And that's what really gets me up in the morning, is knowing that you guys are all working for me to help me. And it's my responsibility to help you by bringing in the business and really helping people and impacting people so that we all could eat.
Yeah.
And that's just the way I see things.
Yeah.
Okay. That's awesome, Henry. Before we wrap up here today, how do people get in touch with you? How do people find you?
Sure. So you could just go to Unique Designs with a Z at the end, not an S.net. And you'll find my Instagram, my YouTube, my podcast. You'll find a free training there. You'll see my monthly mentorship program and the Brand Accelerator program. Those are my 2 core services that we spend a lot of time building and offering to our clients. But yeah, if you just go to my website, and you'll find everything right there.
Awesome. Awesome. We'll put a link for that into the show notes as well.
Yes, you
Beautiful.
can follow him on Instagram. I'm not sure if I've heard you say that. Instagram, it's the brand DR. You can check him out on YouTube. Just search for Unique Designs, and he's gonna show up, or type in the brand doctor or Henry Kaminsky Jr. He's gonna show up on YouTube. And yes, go to www.uniquedesigns.net to check all of his work there. Amazing work. you know what, Henry? When we talk, it could last for hours and we don't run out of things to talk about. And that's why I love you, Henry, so much. Thank you for being our guest on our show. I think that's one of the reasons why we gel so much. We gel together. It's because we have the same value. We want to help people. If you mentioned that you are also, you're not just helping people to have jobs, but you're also bringing in food and helping bringing in food on their table. And that is also one of the mission of Great Work Online is, single moms are very close to my heart because I'm also a single mom. And we've got team members who are single mom, and we are not just David and I are not just doing this to help entrepreneurs, but we are also helping freelancers to be with their
Absolutely.
family, not to leave their house, because I've been there, work away from their family, and it's awful.
Yeah.
So I hope you guys get tons of nuggets in how you can let go of that control. Don't be the hero. Don't try to do everything you can. You heard Henry, the brand doctor. He admitted that he needed help, and when he admitted he needed help, he hired somebody, a project manager, and that started it all. Everything is history. It's just growing and growing and being successful. And his Henry, you've been very open about your success, and I'm happy that I am part of that, and I am happy that you shared with our audience your story. Thank you
Well,
so much.
you're welcome, and I wouldn't be able to do it without you. So keep up the great work, guys. And you guys, your name of the business precedes itself. You know, you do amazing work online for me, and we've also sent you quite a few clients, and
Yeah.
like that's what it's all about. It's about giving and just helping other people, and you'll get it back tenfold. It may not be instant gratification that like we all want, but it eventually will come back around. So just keep up the
It
great work,
will.
guys.
Good karma, Henry.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Henry.
Henry. So, guys, this has been Pam and David. You're listening to How to Build a Team podcast, and we will catch you on the next episode. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.